Always at the ready.
I'm in charge here at the White House. Everybody head for the bomb shelters.
Okay, Bob, you're all set.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order this meeting of the Town Council of Little Compton. The first item of business is to take a roll call of those councilors present. Councilor Golembeski.
Here.
Councilor Mataronis.
Here.
Councilor Moore. I believe he is absent at the moment. Councilor Wallach.
Here.
Councilor Mushin is here. There are 4 of us. A quorum is established. We'll convene the meeting. The first item of business then is approval of minutes of June 10th.
Going to approve the June 10th Town Council meeting as filed.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? A roll call vote then. Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. The next item is June 15th executive session minutes.
Motion to approve the June 15th, 2021 executive session unless anybody has any questions or comments on them.
I'll second that as well.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski to approve the minutes of June 15th. Any discussion? A roll call vote. Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. And then the June 16th interview session.
Motion to place the June 16th, 2021 interviews on file unless anybody has any questions, comments on those.
Second again.
Motion by Mataronis, second by Golembeski to approve and place on file those minutes. Any discussion? A roll call vote. Councilor Golembeski.
Aye.
Councilor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councilor Wallach.
Aye.
Mushin, aye. Thank you. Our next item of business is a communication item, which I have moved to the front of the agenda in agreement with the submitter. Brennan Tierney representing the Peace Development Fund Foundation is with us in order to present to us a request that the council endorse a Back from the Brink call to prevent nuclear war, a policy that the organization that he is part of believes will greatly reduce the real and immediate risk posed by nuclear weapons and the chances that they'll ever be used again. I noticed that Brennan is with us and has been brought up to the level of a panelist. And Brennan, I'll ask then that you proceed, sir, with your words to us.
Great. Thanks so much. And good evening, members of the council. My name is Brennan Tierney. I'm 25 years old and I was born and raised in Little Compton. I first want to extend my gratitude to Council President Mushin for being so accessible and really more than generous throughout this whole process, as well as to the town clerk, Carol Wardell, and to all members of the council for your service to the town. I'd like to just quickly say that we're also joined tonight by Dr. Ira Helfand, a member of the International Steering Group of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, the recipient of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize, and the co-president of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, the recipient of the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize. So thanks, Ira, for being here. The resolution before you tonight is aimed at the prevention of nuclear war. And I'm committed to this cause because I have borne some witness to the horrific impact of nuclear weapons from when I visited the museums in both Hiroshima and Nagasaki while visiting my girlfriend's mother in Japan. These were the only 2 times in history that nuclear weapons have been used during warfare, and they resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, including of women and children who were burned alive, with hundreds of thousands of ensuing deaths from radiation exposure. It was a harrowing and chilling experience. Yet even more frightening is the thought that today, almost 76 years later, the threat posed by nuclear weapons is far greater. Unlike 76 years ago, today 9 countries all possess nuclear weapons that are far more powerful. And I have been working on disarmament issues since I participated as one of 35 young people from countries around the world in the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons summer academy, where we had the opportunity to talk directly with survivors of the atomic bombings, as well as with diplomats, policymakers, and security experts. We also learned from those who helped lead the effort in the passage of the historic Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which entered into force in January of 2021 and officially prohibited the use and possession of nuclear weapons under international law. All of which leads me to why I'm here today, submitting a resolution that is part of the Back from the Brink campaign. The most important point of the resolution before you is the first point, whether or not you think it is in the best interest of Little Compton constituents for the United States to pursue a verifiable agreement among all 9 nuclear-armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. The other 4 components of the resolution represent important interventions that would help reduce the likelihood of an accidental or intentional use of nuclear weapons. In other words, I'm not here asking whether you are for a particular war or against a particular war, or whether you agree or disagree with the United States' use of nuclear weapons 76 years ago. What I'm asking is whether or not you're willing to be part of one small intervention toward the prevention of nuclear war, ensuring that, as was done in the 1980s, there are concrete steps taken toward disarmament here in the United States and elsewhere around the world. And I realize you're likely wondering why or how this matters to Little Compton. And as I'm sure Dr. Ira Helfand will explain more shortly, a nuclear attack anywhere on the planet, even far from our community here in Little Compton, would have enormous humanitarian impacts, shock the entire global food chain, impact our already fragile climate, and indeed have consequences for our local community. This could happen from nuclear warfare between India and Pakistan, for instance, or in the Middle East, or with North Korea, China, or Russia, which is why the scope of this resolution is aimed at international disarmament. If a large-scale nuclear war were to occur involving the United States, our community, situated between New York City and Boston, and with a naval warfare center a stone's throw away in Newport, would be at worst a target or more likely collateral damage. Everything we cherish about our beloved Little Compton would be at risk. There are no winners of a nuclear war. And these possibilities, I'm afraid, are not unfounded. Defense experts and scientists alike caution that we are as close to the brink of a nuclear war as we were at the height of the Cold War. Just let that sink in a little. And the global COVID-19 pandemic has revealed our unpreparedness to deal with crisis on a large scale. Recovery from a nuclear war would be impossible. The only sensible path is prevention. So to me, this issue so clearly matters to our community and for the sake of children and future generations. And it's worth noting that there is also precedent for the goals of the resolution before you. After all, it was US President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev that said in 1985, quote, "A nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought." That's right. At the height of the Cold War, the Republican president of the United States publicly acknowledged that a nuclear war would lead to worldwide catastrophe and had to be prevented. President Reagan then took action, concluding the landmark INF agreement and establishing the foundation for the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, 2 of the most important arms control measures in history. So I say to my Republican friends on the town council that you may rightfully be proud of and inspired by the action that a Republican president took to address the same threat that I'm asking you to address tonight, and that we look to you for the same type of bold leadership that your party once demonstrated when it helped turn the tide on nuclear escalation. People my age weren't around in the 1980s when there was such a widespread sense that the risk of a nuclear attack was imminent. Yet with such stunning silence on this issue, it seems many people older than I have either forgotten or chosen to ignore that this threat has not gone away. And I am here to remind us all of that. Back from the Brink aims to raise awareness and mobilize people to put a stop to the new arms race we see emerging, just as people once did in the 1980s. And I believe we need your voice to raise awareness and to push for change for the safety and well-being of the constituents you're sworn to protect. So I hope you'll join dozens of other municipalities, as well as the states of Oregon and California, in endorsing this resolution, and that tonight you take a stand for peace and the prevention of nuclear war. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Brennan. Mr. Helfand, did you have a comment that you'd like to add to that, sir?
Yes, I would like to, although I must say, Brendan was incredibly eloquent and said most of what needs to be said. But thank you for the opportunity for me to speak with you tonight also in support of this Back from the Brink resolution. We're facing many urgent problems today, but two existential dangers, the climate crisis and the growing possibility of nuclear war, threaten the very survival of our civilization and possibly our species, and we need to address them. Experts like former Defense Secretary William Perry have stated repeatedly that we are closer to nuclear war today than we were during the worst moments of the Cold War. And the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists have set their iconic doomsday clock to 100 seconds to midnight, the closest it's ever been to nuclear war. But at every level of government and society, we are ignoring these warnings. At the same time, recent studies have underlined the magnitude of the destruction that modern nuclear weapons will cause. We used to think it would take a large-scale war between the US and Russia to destroy the world. Such a conflict remains a very real threat, and the new arms race between the US and Russia and the increasing nuclear saber-rattling on both sides are a key reason why we need to address this issue. The best estimate we have is that a war between the US and Russia would kill 100 million Americans in the first afternoon, destroy the entire economic infrastructure of the country, and put enough soot into the upper atmosphere to trigger a man-made ice age that would kill the vast majority of the human race over the coming years, perhaps causing the extinction of our species. We also know now that even a much more limited nuclear war, as might take place between smaller nuclear powers like India and Pakistan, would also pose a threat to the entire planet. Given the size of their nuclear arsenals, a war in South Asia would not cause nuclear winter, but it would put enough soot into the upper atmosphere to cause worldwide climate disruption, a catastrophic decline in global food production, and a nuclear famine that would put billions of people at risk, including tens of millions right here in the United States. Such a limited nuclear war would not mean the extinction of our species. It would mean the end of modern civilization as we know it. No civilization in human history has ever withstood a shock of this magnitude, and there is no reason to believe that the very fragile economic system which we all depend on would fare any better. Yet, despite this imminent danger, there is almost no public attention to this issue. During the Cold War, the urgent need to prevent nuclear war was on the top of everyone's list of problems facing the world. Today, it's barely acknowledged. Rather than working to eliminate their nuclear arsenals, all 9 nuclear weapon states, including the US, have ambitious plans to enhance their nuclear arsenals. By voting to support the Back from the Brink campaign, Little Compton would join more than 50 cities and towns across the country in sending a powerful message that this new arms race must be stopped. Rather, the US must adopt a fundamentally different nuclear policy based on the understanding that, far from making us safe, nuclear weapons are the greatest threat to our security and they must be eliminated. Even the successful use of our own nuclear arsenal against a foreign enemy would cause the same kind of global climate disruption and famine that I just described, destroying not only our enemy, but ourselves as well. These are not weapons in the usual sense of the word. They're suicide bombs. And this is why so many of our leaders who previously supported the maintenance of a nuclear arsenal came to understand that these weapons must be eliminated. People from both major political parties and from the military, the very architects of our nuclear weapons policy over the last 50 years. Ronald Reagan, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, William Perry, Robert McNamara, Colin Powell, former heads of US Strategic Command, Generals Lee Butler and James Cartwright. They understand that we have not survived the nuclear weapons era so far because of wise leadership or sound military doctrine or infallible technology. They know how close we have come to accidental nuclear war. They are aware of the many instances when either the US or Russia actually began the process of launching their nuclear arsenals in the mistaken belief that they were under attack from the other side. And this before the era of cyber terrorism, which dramatically increases the chance of a false warning. They know that we are still here today because, as Robert McNamara famously declared, we lucked out. It was luck that prevented nuclear war. It is unreasonable to assume that our luck will hold indefinitely. If these weapons are not removed, then sooner or later, and perhaps it will be sooner, they will be used by design, by accident, or by miscalculation. It is sometimes argued that it is unrealistic to believe that we can negotiate the elimination of the world's nuclear arsenals. But who would have thought in 1983, at the height of the Cold War, that just 2 years later, Presidents Reagan and Gorbachev would issue that joint declaration that Brennan alluded to, saying that nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought. They ended the Cold War arms race to everyone's surprise, and they began the process of dismantling tens of thousands of nuclear warheads. We cannot know that we will be successful in negotiating a verifiable, enforceable agreement with the other nuclear armed states to eliminate these weapons. But we have to try, because we do know what is going to happen if we don't get rid of these weapons. Some may feel this is a national issue and not something that the town council should concern itself with. I would urge them to reconsider. The council's highest responsibility is to protect the citizens of Little Compton. The federal government is clearly failing to address this existential threat, and the town must do whatever it can to make the federal government prevent this looming disaster. Thank you for considering this resolution, and I urge you to please adopt it. The lives of the people of Little Compton depend on it. Listen to what Brennan's saying. He and people of his generation will inherit this planet. We have a duty to pass it on to them all in one piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Any comments from the council?
Is there anybody else who would like to speak from the public? Bob?
I see no raised hands among the people in the public.
No, I had one go up quickly and then it went away, so I think it was an accident. Oh, or not. It's back again, so let me allow him to speak.
Mr. Tierney.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members of the council, for this opportunity to address you tonight about such an important topic. I won't take a lot of time. Before I do want to join Brennan in welcoming Dr. Helfand to our community. It's not often that we get to hear from a peace partner, and I'm grateful for him for taking the time from his busy schedule to be here. For me, there are obviously a lot of reasons why Little Compton should try, at least, to prevent a nuclear war. I know that all of you want world peace. I do also recognize that we may disagree about how to achieve that result. But I don't want to leave the impression that this community is indifferent about this. I'm in support of this resolution for all of the reasons outlined by the previous speakers. But in addition, I wanted to just read a list of names of folks from town who have authorized us to add their names to those who are also in support of the resolution. I'd like to do that right now, if I could. Those would include Abigail Brooks, Susan Hall Migat, Rush Taggart, Helen Woodhouse, Jerry Cohen, Holly Billings, Nan Heffenrepper, Steve Oleski, Judith Tick, Janet Lyle, Fred Torpy, Elizabeth Torpy, Jana Porter, David Dern, and I'll add my wife Jane Tierney to that mix as well. We all support this resolution, and we urge you to bring your support to it as well. You know, folks of my age lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. We were taught how to hide under our desks in elementary school to prevent supposedly radiation dangers. In junior high school, we were taught how to live in a civil shelter. Essentially, my whole life, I've lived in the shadow of nuclear war. And it's time to stop it. I know reasonable minds can differ, and you might not agree with all the items in this platform, but I suggest to you that you need to come up with an alternative if you can't support this resolution. Because if not us, then who's going to work on this stuff? And if not now, at the brink of extinction, when are we going to work on this? And if not by petitioning the government, as Brennan is attempting to do tonight, and getting your support, then how do we achieve peace? Please speak to this and tell us your view of how to lessen the threat of nuclear war if you cannot support the resolution. Thank you very much for your time. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I mean, this is a very unique situation. I wouldn't like to see a nuclear war myself, but if we disarm ourselves and other countries don't, then wouldn't that make the United States vulnerable, more vulnerable, so to speak, than what we are now? And how would we know that the other countries that have nuclear weapons are disarming themselves?
Is that a question to me, Counselor?
Well, yeah, you could answer that question. Sure. I mean, this is one of my
Sure.
thoughts.
Okay.
I think the resolution is good. I think it's much more than what this council, I mean, we could support it or not support it, but it's much, I guess it's a grassroots situation you're trying to do. This town isn't going to have any decision on what goes on at the White House.
Oh, I beg to differ, sir. I beg to
Okay.
differ.
Well,
That's-
we can have a difference of opinions.
That's right.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So I guess to try to respond, Ira can probably do a much better job than me, but I'll take a stab at it. Nobody's talking about unilateral disarmament. We're talking about pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate the arsenals. I don't want to give up my weapons either. I'm talking about a verifiable agreement. So I believe it's been done as alluded to earlier. Tens of thousands of missile warheads were dismantled under a similar type of effort. It's been done in the past. Those kinds of things grew up from small towns, cities and towns objecting to the misappropriation of money for these nuclear arms that could better be spent in our communities and better protect ourselves. Listen, I think we're kidding ourselves in the age of cybersecurity threats. If we think a new nuclear bomb is going to protect us, we're going to be hit with a cyber Pearl Harbor. It's obvious. They have already attacked our pipelines, our energy grid. It's only a matter of time. If these same bad actors have their hands on nuclear weapons, it can end life as we know it. That's the best I can do to that response. And thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Could I add a word to that as well?
Certainly.
I did just want to emphasize there is nothing in this resolution that calls for unilateral disarmament. We are calling for a negotiated, enforceable, verifiable agreement of the sort that President Nixon entered into, the President Reagan entered into, the President Obama entered into. And this is not going to be some soft, feel-good type agreement. This is going to have to be a very vigorous treaty with intrusive inspection allowed for, and with the ability of countries to take action if there is any belief that any of the countries that are party to the treaty are not fulfilling their obligations. We need to do this very carefully, but it needs to be done. And I do think that small towns raising their voice is critical to this process. The situation in the 1980s was fundamentally changed, the political dialogue in our country about nuclear weapons, by the Freeze movement, which consisted of hundreds of small towns, many here in New England, speaking out and putting this issue on the national agenda and telling the people in Washington, guys, you're risking our lives and the lives of our constituents, and you can't do that. You've got to take better care of us. So I think it's fully appropriate for local towns to take action on this. And I think if enough of us do that, we will have an effect, because we've shown in the past that we've done this before. We're just trying to do, again, what we've already done once before.
So, Mr. President, may I speak?
Please.
So I support the spirit of this resolution. I am not sure how much influence Little Compton can have on the federal government or the world on this issue. But I think it's something that's been brought to us as a grassroots effort that makes sense and is important, at least as a symbolic gesture. And we do have a very active peace alliance in this town that many of the members were just cited as supporters of this. And I think that's been an important representation of our town. And I think that this could be a nice complement to all the work that they've done over the years. And like I said, I have no idea how much influence it will have on the broader subject or the broader world, but it certainly can't do any harm. So I would support it, and I would make a motion to support it, but I don't know if you want to do that, want me to do that now, or you want to continue the discussion for more.
Just to see if other counselors would entertain that motion, certainly, but is there any other comment?
Yeah, if I may, Bob. I grew up with MAD. I'm still living in MAD. I'm sure they all know it's mutual assured destruction. It's become a lifestyle that I've never forgotten about. I take some issue about people saying they've forgotten about it, because there's a lot of survival food and all this stuff that's for sale. So I still think it's active in a lot of people's mind. And I'm trying to not offend anyone here, but maybe the millennials aren't taking it so serious because they haven't grown up living with it like we have. I live on a farm. I'm always thinking, boy, if things go south, can I raise enough food to feed my family in the town, or at least take care of some people? So it's a reality in my mind. The resolution, I agree with Anya in principle. It's just going to be symbolic. I don't know what kind of power or authority it's going to have behind it. And as I read the 5 points, actively pursuing verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate the nuclear arms, I agree with that. I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with that. But when you start going down to renounce the option of using nuclear weapons first, there's a lot of bad actors out there. They have a lot of good people in their country, but the ones that control it are the bad actors. And if you put a pause button on a nuclear war, then anybody that would consider doing it would say, oh, we can shoot first, because they're not going to shoot first back. I know that sounds a little cavemanish maybe, but it's a reality. There's a lot of bad actors out there. I think the majority of people are good, but unfortunately, there's a lot of good people that are under very bad governments. And Reagan's whole thing that he did, he came across as a position of strength. He said, if you throw anything at us, we're going to make sure that you're not going to survive it. You may wipe us out, but we're going to wipe you out. So he came through as a position of strength to make that agreement. And it worked. I admit it. I think if we go, it makes me hesitant to go forward saying, all right, I'll put my gun down first. When you know that there's a lot of bad actors that say, oh, there's an opportunity. And there are still countries out there that really dislike us and what we stand for. It makes me apprehensive to think that we would disarm. Again, goals, the resolutions, is it going to do any good? Maybe. I doubt it, but you've got an industrial military complex that is pushing the government. You've got people that want to spend money, and you've got wars on top of wars. They're always fighting. And it's biblical. Wars have been going on forever. There's always been conflicts. I think the internet has actually made it worse. yes, I'm old fashioned, but I think the internet has actually made it worse because it's got people, the paper tigers, we used to call them when you wrote letters, write a nasty letter and you're going to let you have it. And then you talk to them in person and they all back down. And that's what the internet's created. Anyway, I'm going on and on and on, so I'll stop.
Might I respond also to Paul's point about putting down our arms? Because again, I do want to emphasize there's nothing in this resolution that calls for us to do that. And no first use does not mean that you don't strike back. It means that you don't strike first. And that's very important because the United States has actually threatened to use nuclear weapons first on many occasions, and other countries have as well. And if they all pledged not to strike first, that would dramatically lessen the danger of a war taking place by accident. If some country chooses to attack us first, we will have more than enough capability on our submarines, which are invulnerable essentially to attack, to destroy any country on the planet many times over. And everybody knows that. So we are still in a position of great strength in pursuing an agreement of this sort. Saying that we're not going to use nuclear weapons first merely lowers the temperature and helps to get us to a safer place where we're less likely to have a war by accident. If we have a first use policy, as we do now, that requires us to keep our weapons on hair trigger alert, which makes them vulnerable to cyber terrorism. And that is probably the most likely way that a nuclear war will start today, that some cyber terrorist group will hack into our command and control systems and get us to launch our nuclear weapons when we don't really intend to. And no first use is a way of lessening the danger of that happening, making us less vulnerable to a cyber attack.
And a little bit justification to my point, the internet has made things worse.
Bob, Larry Anderson has his hand up.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, council members. I just wanted to point out, and I didn't have it to back in history to get the exact language, but there is a precedent for the town council acting on a resolution with regard to nuclear fighting policy, and the effort of Little Compton had a direct impact. I was present and involved in it back in the late 80s when the Air Force proposed to build a GWEN tower, ground wave emergency network tower, on property that is now part of the Simmons Mill Pond Management Area as part of a global communication system to maintain communications during nuclear warfare as a result of electromagnetic pulse proposals. Little Compton residents and others in the area opposed it. The town council, as I recall, I wish I had a language, supported the resolution. The governor at the time supported a resolution. The Attorney General of Rhode Island, as a result of pressure, filed a suit against the Air Force to forestall the erection of a tower here. That effort won an injunction in federal court. The Air Force, in that case, chose, first of all, not to build a site here. Within a couple of years, this is 87, 88, 89, killed the program, and Congress defunded the program for GWEN. So there is a precedent, and Little Compton's effort had a clear impact. There's no question about it. The other thought I would offer is, and this, in a sense, responds to Paul's comment that he supported the first bullet point in this resolution, actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. If you're uncomfortable about some of the other bullet points in this, a compromise would be to adopt the resolution with, say, the first bullet point, maybe the provision about Compton calling on the U.S. to embrace the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and compromise. It's just a thought. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry. Anyone else like to speak?
Brennan has his hand up again.
if I could just quickly, and I don't want to belabor it. I think I would first say, to response to Larry, that I would be open to that friendly amendment if it were to be made by a council member to accept even just the first bullet point of this resolution. And I think I just want to reiterate what I started my testimony with, which is that the only time nuclear weapons have been used in warfare on civilians was 76 years ago in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that the threat of a nuclear use anywhere on the planet is far greater, and there are no winners. I mean, I think Paul Golembeski, you sort of made the point, or Councillor Golembeski, excuse me, when you said, if you wipe us out, then we'll wipe you out. I think that seems like a lose-lose situation to me. And it's a dangerous game to continue on this trajectory for people in my generation, so that, future generations can live on a secure planet. And lastly, I'd just say, I know you're asking whether this is going to do anything. If you vote to say yes, what is it going to do? What is it going to do if you vote to say no? This is a point of trying, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So if I may, sir, I can support the resolution with the first bullet point. I'm just uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I grew up in the way I grew up. I feel like it's a call for disarmament, which is, I can live with a call for disarmament as long as it's verifiable and everything like that. But if we renounce, I'm nervous about things like renouncing, we'll shoot first, and the hair trigger and all those things take the authority away from the president and launch a nuclear attack. Well, we've seen how our Congress and Senate works. If it'd be 5 or 6 years later after the war when they finally decide, okay, we'll do it or we won't. I just don't want to support a resolution that gums up a system that, as dumb as it is, I agree, mutual assured destruction is a crazy system, but damn it, it's worked.
It has not.
It's worked, but it's crazy. I get it, but I can support the first bullet point. I can't support the rest of them.
I was going to make the same statement before Larry came on, that I mean, actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. I don't see a problem with that. The other four, I think that's taking the authority away from the United States to protect itself. And I would support it with just the first bullet point, if that's going to be appropriate or acceptable to the petitioners.
That seems like a reasonable approach to me as well. And Larry, as always, thank you for being our town historian.
Would you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, I actually hadn't made a motion yet. So how about I make a motion now that we adopt the resolution, striking the second, third, fourth, and fifth bullets toward the end of the resolution.
I'll second that.
The motion has been made and seconded to call on the United States to lead a global effort to prevent nuclear war by actively pursuing a verifiable agreement among nuclear armed states to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. Is there any further discussion on the matter? I'll ask for a roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
Aye.
Councillor Mataronis.
Aye.
Councillor Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I
very
appreciate your
much.
time.
Thank you, Brennan, for being a good
Thank
citizen.
you.
Thank you. All right, the next item of business then, and thank you to all who participated in that. I have opinions, I'll share them with you at another time individually, but I'm grateful for the fact that we were able to come to consensus, and I appreciate the efforts that were made to do that. The next item of business is the old business proposal for extension of Special Directive 5. This constitutes the 11th revision of this special directive. And I would point out that just this afternoon, the administrator and I were on a call with the League of Cities and Towns, which indicates that the legislature may be very close to closing out its year, and in so doing, removing the governor's opportunity or right to impose special directives, in his case, executive orders that are not subject to the legislature. That would precipitate, for example, us considering immediately our own. And I will tell you that were you to endorse this, it gives me the power to act on your behalf, and I would so act immediately were the state to declare that there is no longer an emergency, specifically with respect to all sorts of things that then would be changed back to the pre-COVID. We would implement those at my direction on your behalf, should that occur during the period of this.
Motion to approve the extension of state of emergency in the town of Little Compton.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Golembeski to approve the extension. Is there further discussion? A roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Bullock.
Aye.
Russian, aye. Thank you. The next is to review and discuss a proposal submitted by DPW Director to amend Chapter 8 of the Town Code as it relates to transfer station fees. You have your information from the prior, actually it's 2 meetings ago. You're aware of what he has proposed there. Is there discussion on that? Basically, I think what we're looking forward for is for giving him guidance along with the administrator to come forward with a change to our town ordinance. Is that accurate, administrator? Okay, thank you. So comments on that. It's transfer station sticker fees, coupons, seasonal passes. Then it goes on to things like specifics on tires, specifics on various other forms of trash. The clerk, meanwhile, as she has both a direct annual role in much of the reporting of this, and as well the office role of being the person who sells people these various things, had some comments that she put forward and in the way of suggestions about dollar values that might be appropriate. I'm thinking this lends itself to saying to the administrator and to the Director of Public Works, we are interested in a revised proposal for the ordinance. Please proceed in accordance with the guidance that both the DPW and the clerk have put forward, and with the following differences or constraints, if you think that's a good way to go.
Could we go by them one by one? Because I think, as we all know, we're paying quite a bit to get our refuse hauled. So I think we should go up a little bit more than what's been proposed. I'm thinking the stickers, 25 or 50 bucks. I mean, we can go 25 bucks now. I think it just has to be a little bit more. And the coupon's probably $5. And then seasonal passes should be $15. And then I would propose that on the tires, and I know we had a problem previously that you charge too much for tires, people stop on the side of the road, throw them in the woods. Hopefully those days are over, but car tires should be same thing as what RERIC is charging, $5 for ones with rims. Tractor trailers, $10. Whatever RERIC is charging, I think that's what we should charge. Because I don't think we should be charging less. I don't think we should be charging less than what we got to pay to get rid of them. But that's my thoughts, and anybody else can interject. We can come to a consensus on it, or we can leave it the way it is.
Well,
I'm good with that approach.
yeah, this is not in the form of a proposed ordinance change yet.
No,
So and that guidance that you've just issued, unless there's disagreement on the council, it sounds like we're generally in agreement with going a little heavier on these, particularly in light of the fact that we want to recover what it costs us so as to be able to reduce the number of occasions in which someone either, inadvertently or for whatever reason, adds a significant number to our solid waste disposal. All right. With those guidances, which I think the administrator will have in hand from the notes of the clerk, shall we direct that a proposal be brought forward to us for a modification to Chapter 8 of the town ordinances? Is that your pleasure?
I'd move that.
okay, on the last one, refuse haulers. Yeah, Bob, you and I spoke about this, and there's more and more people getting into it, so they must be making money. And their thought is always, well, these people would be taking their trash to the transfer station anyways. That could be true. It might not be true. I'm not sure, but they pay $300 annually. I don't know if we want to go up to 500 for that, because they bring a lot of trash to the transfer station. And I know they make some good money. And of course, I'm going to probably get phone calls from the refuse haulers, but.
Well,
Yeah.
we can certainly add that to what we would like to see in the form of a draft, and then we can have the debate. What we have right now is a kind of a mix of suggested numbers, some solid numbers. If we return it to the Director of Public Works with the direction to come back to us, we'll get some tangible numbers that are that incorporate what's been said tonight, and then we can decide whether they've gone far enough or too far or whatever.
Okay.
If I may, sir, I just want to be careful on the refuse part that we gear it towards, I think what the DPW director said, we gear it towards the contractors and stuff, start getting their own dumpsters to stop driving that stuff to us. But I don't want to drive it so much that the homeowner that's doing this little project is going to pay this exorbitant fee to take his trailer full of trash. I don't know how to make that balance. So that's something I'd like to work with the administrator on.
Okay. Yeah. I think the lessons learned out of the last few years will be important to this, but perhaps we could move it from this kind of put together set of facts and figures into a ready for prime time proposal, which we can then say, no, not 150, 250 or something like that.
That's fine.
All
I'll
right.
second
The
on
motion has been made by Councillor Wallach. Is there a second to that motion?
second.
Motion, second by Mataronis. Any further discussion? We'll ask for a roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. Well done. Well done. All right. Next, an appointment of a trustee to fill the unexpired term of Ellen Field on the Little Compton Agricultural Conservancy Trust. For the consumption of the public who may not be aware, we have had the opportunity to interview the two candidates, Ned Levine and Ed Bowen, who have applied for this position. I wonder if there is a motion.
It's a tough decision, and I got to put that right up front for both candidates. But my suggestion or my motion would be to nominate Ned Levine to fill that position.
The motion's been made to nominate Ned Levine. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Pardon me. Sorry.
I think Gary just seconded it.
Yeah, the reason I seconded it, because I've been stopped by quite a few people to support Ned Levine. Ed Bowen's a friend of mine. I'd like to see him on it, so I would hope that he put his name forward for some other board or for the Ag Trust in the future, because he's a local boy and he
Yep.
cares about the town. But it appears that Ned Levine's been working for the last 3 years for the trust, kind of on his own and doing a lot of things the trust needs to be done. And he was also brought forward by Bill Richmond. He wanted us the council to support Ned Levine, so that's why I seconded.
All right. Is there further discussion then? We have a motion by Golembeski, second by Mataronis to appoint Ned Levine. And with the side comment that Ed Bowen's qualifications, willingness, et cetera, lead us to suggest that we will call him to tell him of vacancies. Actually, there's one coming forward this evening. So is there any further discussion? Ask for a roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
Aye.
Mataronis.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Motion aye. Thank you. Mr. Moore, I noticed that you are here. Let's see. No, we don't need you at this point. Thank you, sir. Any further discussion on that item? Next is a recommendation from the tax assessor and the administrator regarding successful bid proposal for GIS digitizing of the town tax assessor maps. That recommendation is that we hire, or that we award EAI Technologies the work to digitize our maps. Is there a motion to approve that award?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Wallach. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councillor Golembeski.
Aye.
Councillor Mataronis.
Aye.
Wallach.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations to CAI and our appreciation to AppGeo for being a participant in that process. The next item of business is a report from the administrator on the status of the American Rescue Plan funds. Call your attention to his memorandum in your packet. Yes, sir, go ahead. Mr. Administrator.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you were waiting for one of the councilors to kick in. No, I just wanted to bring the council up to update the council, I should say, on the American Rescue Plan. At the present time, everything is aligned for us to receive the first payment in the first week of July. And obviously, I provided you the breakdowns, that come from the municipality as well as the county allocation, which would total approximately 1.1 million.
Thank you.
And of course, on the last sentence, it should say week of July, not of the July. Somehow that kicked in my fingers are too fast for my brain, or my vice versa.
The July as opposed to the June. All right. Thank you for the report, sir.
Motion to place on file.
Second.
Motion to place on file by Mataronis, second by Golembeski. I'll ask for a show of hands of being in favor of that motion. I see all four hands, all four councilors have voted in favor. Thank you. The next item of business is new business, and it's to set salaries and benefits for non-union positions and departments and to authorize longevity payments. The summary is in front of you. Are there any questions or comments? In the absence of any, would there be a motion to approve that list?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilor Golembeski and Councilor Mataronis to approve the list of salaries and benefits as presented. Is there any further discussion? I'll look for a visual roll call vote of all councilors, seeing that 1, 2, 3 councilors, all 4 councilors have voted in favor. That will be placed on file and executed. The next item of business is to receive a letter from George Goulart resigning from the Zoning Board of Review effective immediately, and a request that we authorize the posting of a vacancy for an alternate member, as the alternate will move up into Mr. Goulart's seat from within the board.
Motion to accept this resignation with regret and send Mr. Goulart a letter of gratitude for his service.
Second,
And might I ask that you amend that to include advertising for the
And advertise for the position.
position? Thank you. Motion's made and seconded to accept with regret, send a letter of thanks and advertise for the vacancy. Is there any further discussion? Ask for an indication with a raised hand as to your willingness to vote in favor. Seeing 4 hands, the 4 members have voted in favor of that motion. Next item of business is to, first of all, it's a copy of a resignation sent to the school department from Patrick McHugh, leaving his post on the school committee to accept the town council seat, which will be vacated by Anya Wallach as of June 30th. And then secondly, to acknowledge the upcoming need to seek letters of interest for individuals to serve on the budget committee, given that the recently successful budget committee candidate, Travis Audie, has elected to be, as the next highest vote getter, the replacement for Mr. McHugh on the school committee.
I'll approve that motion.
Could we clarify what that motion was?
Yeah, please.
What the motion is what Mr. Mushin just read.
We are simply acknowledging receipt. We are doing
Okay.
anything, as a council, because neither of these is our responsibility.
Okay.
Motion would be to accept and place on file.
Motion to accept and place on file.
I'll second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Golembeski. Is there any further discussion? I'll ask for,
I'll just say I'm sorry for causing the domino effect.
more about you. Just, show of hands of those approving the motion. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 councilors have voted in favor. The next is to receive letters of interest for the following. The Harbor Master Commissioner of Recs, we have a single applicant. That applicant is the incumbent Mike Massa.
Gary, I think you're muted.
Your lips are moving, but there we go.
Motion to appoint Mike Masters Harbor Master.
Second that.
Any discussion? A show of hands of those approving the motion to appoint Mike Massa, reappoint Mike Massa as Harbor Master, seeing 1, 2, 3. Mr. Mataronis votes in favor. 4. The next item is to appoint the Assistant Harbor Master. We have a single applicant. The applicant is Chris Brady.
Motion to appoint Chris Brady as Assistant Harbor Master and send a letter of gratitude to Charlie Hall, the previous Assistant Harbor Master.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to accept and to send a letter of thanks. Is there any further discussion? I'll look for a show of hands of those approving of this motion. Seeing 4 hands, the motion carries unanimously. The next is to appoint 3 members to the pension committee. We have 2 of those incumbents, Mr. Lord and Mr. Mara, who have applied for reappointment, and I have not yet heard from Mr. Ham or from any other candidate. So I would ask for a motion to appoint Lord and Mara, reappoint them to the pension committee, and to continue our the matter of the 3rd member until the next meeting.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Golembeski and seconded by Councilor Wallach. Any further discussion? I'll ask for a show of hands for approval of that motion. Seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands, all have voted in favor. The next is the probate judge. The incumbent, Richard Daddario, has reapplied for appointment, and he is the only applicant.
Motion to reappoint Richard Daddario as the probate judge.
Second,
Motion made by Mataronis, second by Wallach. Any further discussion? A show of hands of those voting in favor of that motion, seeing 1, 2, 3.
Gary.
Gary, are you, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I got somebody moving in my garage downstairs, so it's kind of distracting me.
All right, well, all right, let us know if you need, the police chief is on with us, so if
It may be called. It's my son. I may want him locked up tonight.
fair enough. I don't think we'll go further with that item.
The chief is on anyways. Maybe I'll have him send somebody down.
Sometimes I wonder. The next item of business is a zoning board member. That term expires 7/15, and we have a single candidate there.
The incumbent, which is Mark Sawowski.
Thank you, the incumbent, Mark Sawaski.
Motion to place Mark Sawaski, reappoint Mark Sawaski.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Councilor Wallach. Any further discussion? Hands of those approving that motion, seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, all 4 councilors voting in favor of that. The alternate zoning board member is also on our docket. And
That is also the incumbent, Charles Hall.
Charles Hall, thank you.
Motion to reappoint Charles Hall to the zoning board.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Golembeski to reappoint Charles Hall to the zoning board alternate. Any further discussion there? A show of hands of those in favor of that motion, seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. All councilors have voted in favor of that motion. Finally, an agricultural conservancy trust member.
I received, I don't believe it made it into your packet, but I did see an email from Rusty Cabot, who is the incumbent, and that's the only one that has applied for that particular position.
Motion to reappoint Rusty Cabot to the Ag Trust.
Second.
The motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach to appoint Rusty Cabot, reappoint to the Ag Trust. Is there any further discussion? Show of hands of those voting in favor of that motion, seeing 4 hands, all have voted in favor of the motion. Next item of new business is a request from the United Congregational Church to hold its annual church fair and road race on August 7th. Use of Pikes Peak in the south side of the Commons.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by raising your hand, seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands. All councilors have voted in favor of that. The next item is a water use agreement for execution by the town to enter into an agreement to allow water at 15 Peanuts Lane from a dry hydrant, and the details are in your packet.
Chief Petron, do you want to speak on this?
You are.
I'm all set with it. We tested it. It works fine. And it's a good hydrant for that area. We don't have much supply of water in that area.
Motion to approve this contract.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach to approve the execution of this contract. Any discussion? A hand vote. Please raise your hand if you are in favor of this motion. Seeing 4 hands, all 4 councilors are voting in favor. Thanks. The next item is a letter received from Mark Cady resigning from the planning board.
Motion to accept the resignation from Mark Cady with regret, and to send him a letter of gratitude for his long service on the planning board and to advertise his position.
Thank you.
I'll second that, and also like to thank Mark. He took me under his wing when I went on the planning board many, many years ago. So thank you, Mark.
He's been on there a long time. He deserves kudos.
I likewise was a Mark Cady trained man from the planning board after Councilor Golembeski had already successfully achieved qualification there. So yeah, it's a long history. Thank you, Mark. Then a motion, a vote to approve that motion by raising your hand and signifying by raising your hand. Seeing 4 hands, that motion carries and Mark Cady's resignation has been accepted. Finally, to seek concurrence to pursue various solutions to remedy audiovisual in the council chambers due to pending legislation that may mandate certain audiovisual requirements. To be clear, we anticipate as early as next week, it may be mandatory that all boards and commissions meet in person, where it is being tied to the completion of the legislative session. When the legislative session is completed, it is their intention to require the governor to rescind his emergency orders, among which are emergency orders which permit a different way of handling meetings. So there's some urgency to this. We don't have yet a solid proposal, but we've got a couple of very well-developed ideas. What we're seeking tonight is using the funds that are in the information technology line item to pursue various solutions to make us capable of doing the following: holding a meeting in person, being able to see all of the people there, all of the people there being able to interact with each other, as well as that's the easy part, as well as interact with people logging in remotely. That's a feature that we don't yet have the ability to do without interference that we need to deal with. Interference in the sense of audio-visual interference. So we would like the authority of the council to pursue the solutions and to execute the most cost-effective and viable solution.
I'll move that we, I'll give a motion for the concurrence for this unfunded mandate that's about to be dumped upon us. But what are we going to do? We got to do it.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to pursue various solutions on audio-visual support. Is there any further discussion? Looking for a show of hands of those in favor of the motion, and seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands, all have voted in favor. Thank you.
Can I just ask, Tony, are we able to use any of the American Rescue funds for this purpose?
That may be a possibility. I just have to check that a little further, but definitely it will be checked that out.
That's a great question. The broadening of the infrastructure definition is really what's at hand here, as to what extent, certainly it's not a recurring cost, to Councilor Golembeski's point. It's a one-time imposed cost, we think, but yeah, we'll look for that as well. The next item is to the council sitting as the Board of License Commissioner, requesting that the Little Compton Game Club be authorized a one-day Class F beverage license for a clam bake on July 27th.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach to approve. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just going to abstain because I'm a member of the club.
Thank you. A roll call vote then of the remaining 3 councilors, signified by raising hands. Seeing all 3 hands, vote then is 3 in favor with 1 abstention. Mr. Golembeski. Next item is communications. It's an email from Barbara Rocha thanking the council for the use of 32 Commons on behalf of Girl Scout troops 1107 and 725, and asking if they could continue to use the facility in September, returning on Tuesday evening 6 to 7:30 p.m. and Thursdays 3 to 4:45 after school.
Motion to approve as long as there's no conflicts, scheduling conflicts.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve, subject to there being no scheduling conflicts. Any discussion? Look for a show of hands of those approving that motion. Seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands, all have voted in favor of that motion. A copy of a resolution adopted by the Burrillville Town Council and Burrillville School Committee requesting the removal of the mask mandate for school children.
Motion to place on file.
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded to place on file. Any discussion? Ask for a roll call. Ask for a show of hands of those approving that motion. Seeing all 4 hands, all 4 councilors have voted in favor of placing on file. And then a request for the renewal of the refuse hauling license issued to Stephen K. Reuter Lawn and Landscape for a vehicle in excess of 4,000 pounds.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach. Any discussion? A show of hands of those voting in favor of that motion. I see all 4 hands. The vote is 4-0 to approve the renewal. The consent file.
Motion to place the consent file on, motion to place consent calendar on file unless anybody has anything they want to pull for discussion.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded to place the consent calendar on file. Any further discussion? Show of hands of those approving that motion. Seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 hands, all have voted in favor of that motion. The payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills as written.
Second.
Motion made by Monroe, second by Wallach. Any further discussion? a show of hands of those approving that motion to pay the bills. Seeing all four, they are done. This is the day that we didn't want to see coming. Ms. Wallach, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for just, I mean, I can't wish you any more than the very best, but I sure do wish your mind was changed. The fact that it isn't says you're on your way to a great job, and we will look forward to hearing great things. And if you ever think you might want to, just ease on back, please.
I'll be back, and I promise to serve the town in whatever way I can. Thank you all. It's been great.
It's been a great pleasure.
You're not getting out that easy. You've got till the 30th. We can find things for you to do.
I know. Paul threatened he's going to schedule meetings every
You
single.
could have 2 or 3 executive sessions and see how fast you could get there, and we'll see.
Thank you, Anya.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
There being no further business before us, I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care all. Have a good night.
Thanks.